Till the next one happens, right? Only days after workers at an auto plant in Tennessee voted against joining a union, some liberals are blaming it on racism. This from Timothy Noah on MSNBC yesterday. He said, quote, "The opposition gathered portrayed this as a northern invasion, a refighting of the Civil War. Apparently there are not a lot of black employees in this particular plant, so that kind waving of the Confederate flag was an effective strategy." Bob Beckel is a former Democratic campaign manager, co-host of The Five. Andrea Tanteros, also co-host of The Five. And how are you guys doing? Good day to both of you. Timothy Noah writes twice a week for MSNBC.com. 2 years ago, he wrote a book about income inequality in America. This particular plant, waving at the Confederate flag, was an effective strategy. What do you think about that?
I think it's a really tired, old, desperate argument that you see people resort to when the real issues like salary and wages, and that's what this was about. If the plant unionizes and lets the UAW take control, do these workers want to give more of their wages to the UAW that essentially bankrupted a lot of companies in Detroit? The plant said no. And it was a very clear-cut vote. This had nothing to do with racism at all. And I think it really is shameful that they're going in this direction. And I know Bob and I are about to brawl on this one because it really is, Bob. It's getting really pathetic.
Bob, can you
defend this here? The UAW, I said, they represented Ford, too, you know, and Ford seems to be doing quite well. So, but it was all the union's fault why Detroit went under. But, you know, I've done a lot of politics in Tennessee. Eastern Tennessee is very Republican. It was not, ironically, the VW plant itself, because they were not actually opposed to having a union. They didn't actively get out there. It was the community around them that did, among others, Senator Bob Corker. The implication of, and this goes back historically, the implication of Northerners coming down to, and this is the most liberal union in the country. They were there for the Civil Rights Movement early. They were there for the Cesar Chavez movement. They were there for now. You go on down the list, and UAW was there, and it was just...
Bob, wait.
Right.
There was a simple question here. Are you also blaming racism?
Yeah.
For that failed union vote in Chattanooga?
I'm blaming much more culture than I am race. I think there was an undercurrent of some race.
Okay, now stop.
Where's the evidence, though?
That's the question.
Well,
where's the proof?
The problem when you say proof,
that opinion.
The problem is that a lot of this was. I talked to a UAW organizer who was down there, and he said it was stuff on the floor of the shop. It was people saying. Other businesses are in the area saying we don't want to be unionized. Do you really want these northern people to come down here? This is very much reminds us of the civil rights movement.
I'm sorry, just to be clear, that's what you're going with?
What do you mean that's what I'm going with?
On the secondhand talk on the floor of a plant to claim racism? It just seems like everything... Hang on. Everything south of the Mason-Dixon line come back to the Confederate flag?
Well, Democrats would like it to come back. And look, the UAW and unions in general are in big trouble in this country, Bill. So they have to grasp for straws. They have to reach for racism when, in fact, VW is a stellar company, right? If I can see if unions are needed to come in to negotiate for higher wages or more generous benefits packages, that was not the case here. They were given the option of this local works council, a very European socialized type of group where workers and management could negotiate. Guess what the workers in VW said? We don't need that. This is a great place to work. And we're worried they're going to do something to our wages. It had nothing to do with race, Bob, and you know it.
No, I don't know it. And that's wrong. I worked in the civil rights movement for a long time, and my father did before me, and I know a lot about that area down there, and there is a cultural undercurrent. But wait a minute. You said that the unions were they'd have to pay money to the unions. Under this right to work laws, you don't have to pay money to unions. So that's wrong. Just flat wrong. And for you guys to assume that you have to have some sort of evidence. Was there a piece of literature that said this was going to be an invasion in the North, that this was going to be Negroes coming down here and doing this? Of course not. But it was a cultural sense in that part of the state, and as I said, I've worked that state, that led to this.
How about this point? L.A. Times, VW workers vote tells UAW get a better sales pitch.
Yeah.
They didn't believe what they were selling down there. That's why the vote went down.
If I were them, I would have done the campaign differently. I think their campaign was not as well run as it should have been. It relied too much on people outside of Tennessee to do it for them. And they didn't have the good old boy network that the Corker and business and the Tennessee business community did.
Isn't that a little racist by saying good old boy? network.
I don't consider that racist.
Listen, this
good old boy.
Go ahead, Andrea.
Every time
hang on, Bob.
Every
1
time
second,
the unions get defeated, whether it's in Wisconsin or here, it somehow boils down to some argument about race, or if Democrats can bring it about gender, they do. The bottom line was this: they were worried that the UAW would come in and, yes, Bob, negotiate for less wages, a lower salary than they're currently getting, and they said, we don't want it, we don't need it, stay out. The unions have done enough damage. And guess what? The unions are so desperate for survival because workers are saying, there's no upshot to giving you a portion of my salary, that they're going to do anything they can and blame it on race and rile up division in the South.
Go ahead, Bob. 30 seconds left.
Can you explain to me why you all always say unions are bad, they're the ones who are responsible for this, for that, so you go down. Now all of a sudden they're a weak group, barely trying to hang on and using racism. You can't have it both ways. Either unions is a big threat, as you people say it is, or it is hanging on, like you just said here.
It was a big threat. Now
instead of rationalizing it, why don't we respect the outcome of the vote?
I respect it. I mean, they won. They ran.
That's not what the unions are saying.
Well, they ran a good campaign. I probably, if I were on their side, I probably would have run the cultural war too.
Did you just?
I just said it, and I'll say it again. I think there are a lot of people. I think there are a lot of people in that company that did not like the idea of the UAW and its history and people coming down into the state. I'm not calling it racism.
Would you advise them to do that?
What?
He just said he would.
What you just said.
Would I advise them to
pick up the phone and call them and tell them to manage a campaign like that?
Yeah, I would. No, I would not. But I would think that. Look. Let's face it, Volkswagen, it has the kind of unionization it does because VW had a long, storied history with Hitler and the Nazis. And one the
oh, come on.
Bob,
they did.
Come on.
They
did.
did.
Wrap this segment
we don't have enough time.
Yeah, that's a problem. That's a problem. You can't raise these things because history dictates a lot of things. If you don't think Volkswagen had a long, storied history with the Nazis, it's the reason that they got unionized, the first company to be unionized in Germany,
Bob,
when the Americans took over.
Volkswagen didn't have to invite UAW to the table and have conversations with them, and they did, and they left it up to the workers. Leave it at that.
So we're going to pull this string back into the ball and put it away for the next 7 hours and 12 minutes, and I'll see you at 5 o'clock. Thanks to both of you. Jamie, what is next?
All right, guys, there's some incredible new technology.